Hello everyone, welcome back to English Champion. On this episode, a message for a very specific group of people. I want to talk directly to homeschool parents here. What I'm going to talk about could be useful for classroom teachers as well, because I'm going to talk about education and how to reach students more broadly. But if you're not involved in education, if you're not a parent, feel free to click away. This isn't for you. That's okay. You won't hurt my feelings. But especially if you are a homeschool parent, I want to talk to you about the opportunities you're providing for your child or your students. And is it possible that we could be doing those things better? So sometimes homeschool families do some things that are a little confusing to me. I often hear them say one thing, but then I see some of the things they're doing, and it might be something that appears to be opposite. And so I just want to make sure I'm understanding the intent behind some of the homeschooling, why parents do what they do, as well as offer some advice on how we might be able to do it better and get the most out of it that we possibly can. So before I get into the specifics of the homeschooling kind of pedagogical process, like how can we teach our kids better, I'm going to share a little anecdote with you, and I want to see if it resonates with you or your kid. Is this what you went through, or is this what your child is going through or has gone through? Because if so, then we're going to have some common ground here that I think can be really helpful for us. So when I was in school, I was mostly bored. Like many people, I went to school for K through 12 and then 4 years of college, and then I decided to keep going, and I went through 6 or 7 years of master's and then PhD programs. So I was in school for 23, 24 years of my life. All right. That's a long time to be in school. And as I said, for the most part, I was bored. I was very lucky to be a good student from very early on. I have two very intelligent parents, and I was lucky enough to get some genetics that made me pretty bright. I learned things very quickly. I like a lot of different stuff. I have a very good memory. So I was in like all the gifted programs and AP stuff all the way through all of my schooling. So school came very easy to me. And one of the outcomes of that was I was bored a lot because I would sit in my classes, then the teacher would explain something, and I would go, okay, I got it. And I'd do the activity real quick and I'd be done. And I'd sit around and wait for everyone else to finish, and I'd have nothing to do. And so I'd just sit there. And so being very good at school, it was fine because I still got good grades and whatever. But there was nothing about it, or very little about it, where I genuinely cared about what we were learning. I just did it because I was good at it, or I did it because the teacher said, or I did it because I didn't want to get in trouble from my parents for not doing my work. So it just became habitual. I just did stuff to do it throughout school, and I didn't really care about learning and being kind of emotionally engaged in whatever we were learning at school. And so that was how it was through almost all of my schooling. I don't hardly remember many high school classes or teachers that truly reached me and engaged me in a way that I thought, wow, this is really valuable. This is super interesting. I can't wait to get to class tomorrow to talk about it with my classmates. Or, this is going to be a really cool project that we're working on. I look forward to actually doing this thing. Everything was just do whatever the teacher says, get it over with, and then wait for the next thing. And when things started to get more difficult, advanced math things, chemistry I was awful at, these kinds of classes that are more challenging, I only tried to do better, again, because the teacher told me to, and because if I got low grades, I was going to get in trouble by my parents. And so I tried my best to get the grades and do the assignments and all that stuff. It wasn't out of learning. It wasn't because I cared about it. And so, that was the majority of my schooling. It was only really until graduate school when I got to pick what I genuinely cared about that things got a lot more interesting. But even through most of college, I was preparing for my career, and even then I'm taking my classes on teaching and education, and I was like, okay, I got this figured out. This isn't hard. It's fine. I'll get through it. And it's very easy, and so it's not a problem. I wasn't doing it because I genuinely cared about it. I did it again because I was kind of already good at it. And so that's kind of I would assume for many people, a sad feeling that you spend all these years and all this time and you are with all these teachers and supposedly doing all this important work and you're mostly bored by it. And so the reason I was thinking about this recently was I was talking to someone who was asking me about how I teach. And over the many years of being a professor and I tell people I'm a teacher, they always ask, oh, well, why did you become a teacher? What made you want to do that? And I always, I have many reasons for it. I've written about it and talked about it elsewhere. But then I had someone ask me recently, well, I know why you became a teacher, but how did you decide to teach the way you teach? And I've had students who have told me over the years, and this happened to be a former student, we were having a discussion, now that they've graduated and have moved on to other things in their life, we were kind of just discussing how schooling used to be. And I've had many students over the years say, very kindly to me, and I appreciate it, I got more out of your class than I did out of any other teacher. You taught in a way that was different than any other teacher I've ever had, and I really appreciate that. And I'm sure there were kids who complained about me too, but those are always very nice things to hear, that students noticed that I did things differently. And so this person was asking, how do you decide to do things differently? What's your methodology? How'd you come up with what you do? And I was describing how, well, it kind of goes back to, for most of my schooling, I was mostly bored by it. And so my approach to teaching has always been, even though I didn't really consciously think of it this way, I sort of just intuitively became this type of teacher that I've always sort of envisioned, well, if I had myself in class, if I looked out across the classroom and I saw myself as a 12-year-old or a 17-year-old or as a 22-year-old in any of those levels of classes, how would I reach that kid, that former me? Because I know he's bored. I know he doesn't care about this stuff. He's very good at it. He's a bright kid. He's doing the work the way I told him to. But I also know he's, his mind's drifting. He finishes that and then he, picks up a book, or he's doing something else because he's waiting for everyone else. Like, how can I get that kid to really be excited about the things we're learning? And so that's kind of my approach. And I apply that to everyone. I kind of just always assume everyone in this class is going to be bored, and someone made them be here, or it's part of their degree plan. They had to take my class or whatever. So they're not super interested in it. And so I think, okay, I know this probably wasn't your first choice. So how do I get you excited about this class and make it really relevant for you, that you not only do the activities the way I ask, and you take the tests in the manner that I want you to score well or whatever, but that you actually want to be here and you want to engage with these deeper ideas and find relevance for your own life that is going to affect the choices you make and the way you live next year, 10 years, who knows how long. I want these ideas to stick with you for as long as possible. So how do I reach that student? And so I do my best, or I have done my best for 25 years of being a teacher, that's kind of how I decide what I'm going to do. And when I am thinking about engagement, I don't think about entertainment. I mean, I don't stand up in front of the class and crack jokes, and I don't really tell funny stories. I don't do gimmicky games and activities to try to get kids excited about it. And it's always very straightforward. I'm just a normal lecturer and instructor. So, I'm not up there being an entertainer, but I've always been able to come up with ways that get kids engaged for their own lives and so that they can become, and they want to become, better human beings. So that's always been my approach. And so that's what I explained to this person who was asking about my personal methodology is, yeah, I'm trying to get kids excited who just go through the motions of school because it's easy or they just don't care, and get them excited about learning, that this stuff actually matters for you, whether you know it or not. It really does. And so that's always been my approach. So maybe that has been you throughout your life. As a parent, you look back on your schooling and you think, yeah, I was just really bored in school. I just didn't, I was good at stuff, but I didn't really get excited about it. Or you have your son or daughter who might be going through the same thing, and maybe that's even the reason you've decided to homeschool, is you thought, well, my kid's bored at school all day. We're going to bring him home and do some more interesting stuff here. And that's a really great attitude to have. However, when I often talk to homeschool parents, or I read what they write online, and I kind of follow various communities and see what they're up to, I often see parents talking about, well, I don't really want to teach my kid. I don't really want to have to be there sitting down with them and teaching them. I want them to be kind of an independent learner. I want them to be working on things on their own. And I think that's kind of an interesting perspective, because I would think, based on what other homeschool families have told me, that one of the reasons they got into homeschooling was they wanted to have a closer bonding time with their child, especially during their academic work. They didn't want to have their kid be distant from them, sending them to a school. But now that at home, they're just sending them to their other room, their bedroom, and going, okay, here's a book, read it. Here's the worksheet, do the assignment. And it's like, wait, I thought you wanted something stronger than that, something deeper than that. And I'm not saying those are wrong. If your kid can handle it and that works for you guys, then great. Do whatever you want to do. I trust parents to do what's best for their kids. But again, it's also a little confusing. As someone who observes these families, I'm seeing two different sides. The side that wants to be actively engaged, and you want to be there with your kid, learning stuff alongside them, and having these deep discussions and talking about it, and playing the role of a real teacher. But then also a lot of parents sort of just want to, oh, I subscribe to this online platform, or I bought this boxed curriculum, and so here you go off and do this, and now you're doing your education. It's like, well, those are two very different things. And so what I'm hoping is that, at least from what I offer, that we get more towards the former, that you want to be more involved. That doesn't mean you're hovering over your kid all day long. That's not good either, where you have to explain every single little thing and you have to sit there and watch them, because otherwise they won't do it. Yeah, that's not really an environment that's very positive either. But we want to create ways where kids actually get excited about the learning and see the value for their own lives and how it shapes their beliefs, how it shapes their actions and the decisions they make, no matter what content area you're teaching them. That it's not just, here's this curriculum, go do it, and then we can check it off the list and say, okay, we completed that, you're now educated, and you can go to the next grade or the next class or whatever it is. That's probably not great either, and it's definitely not maximizing the great potential you have as a homeschool parent, where you have an opportunity to do things that other kids don't get. Again, I went to public schools as a kid, so I'm in the class with 30 other kids for my whole life. Well, there's lots of opportunities that I couldn't have because the teacher's busy with 29 other people. Whereas you as a parent can do so much more by focusing on your one student or two students, or however many, maybe you have a little co-op with 5 or 6 students, who knows? But those small kind of mentorship environments are so much more opportunity than what I ever got as a public school kid. That's what I hope you're wanting to do. Yes, some of the benefits are, well, we can do this curriculum faster and they can get ahead and all that stuff. That's great. It increases the flexibility of your family, that you don't have to be stuck to a very rigid, 8 to 3, 5 days a week schedule. You can kind of do stuff whenever you want. I get all that. That's great and fine. Again, I trust that you're doing what you think is best for your family. But from the academic side, the education side, the pedagogy side, I hope we're not just sitting kids in front of a laptop and going through a module and calling that education, or giving them a workbook and having them go through the pages and thinking they're learning to their maximum potential. Because I think it can be better than that. And just as an example, I had borrowed some materials from a homeschool family a little while ago, and I was just looking through it like, well, what are other homeschool people actually doing? And so I was looking through some of their books. I just have one of them here. I have a whole bag of them, but I'm not going to show you the publisher because I don't want to rip this company very much. But this, just to be aware, this is one of, if not the most popular homeschool companies in the country. All right. The majority of people I talk to use this company. And so I just pulled out one of their books, and this is one of their books, and it's, it's very big, and it's got all this, these pages, and I was looking through it, and I was thinking, well, this is just a textbook, and it's just a bunch of normal descriptions and instructions and activities and worksheets. That's all it is. So I thought, goodness, are parents really plopping this in front of their child and going, okay, here's our schoolwork for the day, do page 12 through 14, and that's our English lesson for the day, our history lesson or whatever. I thought, is that what people are doing? Because When I also read about people saying, well, I want my kid to be an independent learner, that I don't have to hover over them, that I don't actually have to be the teacher for them, I think, you're really missing an opportunity here. And so, again, no criticism of this company. They're very successful, and they're doing good work. But like, I would never use this book. I just wouldn't. Now, as an English expert who's been doing this for 25 years, yeah, I don't need a textbook to help my kid. I can just do that because I have all the knowledge and I can do it better than this textbook can. I'm smarter than the textbook. So I understand that other people aren't like that. You don't have the background and the many years of training and all the stuff that I have. And so I understand why it's easy to resort to, well, just give me a textbook with a bunch of activities in it and I'll just have my kid do that. And that'll be their school. I get it. But the second reason I would never use that book is because I can do so much more from an engagement and bonding standpoint with my child, that we could get much more out of my English instruction, in my case, since I'm an English teacher, than what a textbook could ever offer. I want to have that bond with my child or whatever student I'm working with. And I want to create more opportunities for dialogue and conversation and debate, maybe, that I purposefully challenge my child into what they're thinking, and so I can keep pushing them deeper. These are all things that a textbook just can't do. So that's what I hope you homeschool families out there are really aiming at. And that's why I post on all of my social media places that when I create my materials, for anyone, it doesn't have to be homeschool people, but classroom teachers can use my stuff too. But it's so that you don't just plop your students in front of my videos that I make or the worksheets that I make for you. That it's not an isolated activity that the students are doing. That the student, is listening to me explain a concept, but that you as the parent can pause that video while I'm talking or while I'm asking a question rhetorically, and that you can actually pause it and go, hey, let's actually answer that. What do you think about that? Is he right what he's saying there? Or what do you think about where this is going? What do you disagree with? How does this affect our family? Or, have you ever seen this with your friends, that what he's talking about from that novel that he's reading? These are the questions I want you to be engaged with your student. So you're not just sitting passively watching a lecture, that you're either using the questions I specifically prompt to help you and your student, or if at any moment you just have an idea that you want to go into further with your child, that's what you do. You pause and you take a half hour and have a deep discussion about that topic, and then jump back into my lecture or my materials whenever you want. But that's why I do what I do, is I provide materials that are not just for your student, they're for you as well, so that you can guide your student better instead of just saying, here's an activity, go do it. Here's a worksheet, go do it. Here's a book to read, go do it. Here's a lecture to watch, go do it. No. I never want my students who, yes, even though all mine is on an online platform, because that's how I'm trying to distribute it to people to help people, but it's never for them to just passively sit in front of their computer or their phone. It's for you to sit there with them, listen to what I'm saying as the expert. I'm explaining it, but then I want you to come alongside and tie it to other things they're learning about, other things you and your family have been talking about, something that they've been going through with their friends or other extracurricular activities they're doing. Whatever it is, it's your job to guide them. Let me set the table by explaining it, but then you work your way through it with them. And again, develop that bond, that relationship that you as a parent can have with your own child that goes beyond just the normal bond that you have, which is the biological bond, or the familial kind of values bond. You guys have a certain belief system. That's great. But now you can have a bond over your academics. You can have a bond while you're studying history. You can have a bond while you're studying science or reading that novel with me. You can develop your relationship as a parent and child that goes beyond just, again, the biology or the family ethos that you guys live by. Now it's an educational component. Now it's an academic component that isn't the way it normally is, which is, well, you go to school for 7 hours a day and the school people deal with you there, and then you come home and now we do family stuff here. Well, we can tie those two things together. And so if you send your kid off to just do a worksheet or go watch an online module through some boxed curriculum, well, you're just doing what everyone else has always done, which is send your kid away, and then the academic people do that, and then you go back to doing parenting stuff. What I would think the appeal of being a homeschool parent, and if I were a homeschool parent, what I would do is I would want that relationship between my child and me to become that much stronger while we go through all this interesting educational material, whether it's English, whether it's science, whether it's math, whether it's history, whether it's philosophy, whatever. That's what I really encourage you to pursue. Yes, we want our kids to be independent learners, but make sure that's not just, again, buying a boxed curriculum and saying, okay, well, I'm a homeschool parent because I gave my kid this stuff to work through and they're going to have these workbooks completed by the end of the month. Like, you could be doing so much more. And that's why the materials I've made try to push you in a slightly different direction, that, yeah, you're going to subscribe to some of my stuff because I'm the expert and I'm going to walk you through it and your student through it. But hopefully what the real value in it is that it gives you a million other ideas for how you can bond with your own child while doing academic materials. Now, the other reason I do what I do, and I build my little mini courses the way I do, is because, even though I've taught at all levels, I was a elementary school teacher, I worked at the high school level, and then I've been a college professor for many, many years, is I'm assuming as a homeschool parent, you want your child preparing themselves as best they can for whatever the highest level of academics they're going to pursue. Maybe they won't go to college. That's totally fine. If they are going to go to college, the materials I make are intended to show you more of what college actually looks like. Okay. So again, outside of most boxed curriculum, which just give you a bunch of worksheets, or are huge surveys like American history or English, like at college, we don't do that. You don't take those enormous classes. Or if you do, they're at the very lowest levels. Those are freshman level classes. What college is actually about is going much deeper into those content areas. So you don't take English when you're at college. You take, a class about the novels of the years 1900 to 1940, okay? Or you take a history class about just the Great Depression, okay? You take very specific courses, and those are way more interesting than just a broad survey class that often appears in the boxed curriculum. And so I build my courses intending to be way more interesting than what you would ever get from the stock curriculum that you can buy anywhere. So when you see my courses, they're very interdisciplinary. Again, they're very specific, where I tackle a certain novel or a certain author or a certain time period, or I integrate this field with this field and combine them, because that's what happens at college too. Things aren't as isolated, or at least they shouldn't be. You bring in all sorts of other places that you've learned, classes or other professors or readings you've done, and you combine them in your classes. And too many boxed curricula that I've seen for homeschoolers, and this happens at public school too, I'm just isolating homeschool here, is it kind of just throws everything into one pot and says, we're going to study history now. It's like, well, yeah, that's fine, and that's good at the lower levels where you kind of have to have a basic overview of everything. But as you get higher and higher in schooling, you move away from that stuff. That's not what we do at the college level. So if you want to prepare your students for college, and as a professor, I saw the decline in students coming to college and how unprepared they started to become. And I really think the reason for that is, there's a million reasons, but one of those is, we don't teach those students what college is going to be like. Like, why don't we start preparing students for what college is like a lot earlier? And so my courses, even though they're designed for middle and high schoolers or early college students, they are a glimpse into what real college classes are like. There are lots of lecture, lots of presentation, and then lots of discussion that really make you think and research and dive deeper into those topics. They're not just these broad overviews. It's much higher levels of critical thinking. And so if you want your student to get ahead of his peers, and then if he wants to go to college, be ready for college and even be ahead of those other college students, the things I design are for you. All right. They're intended to be college type classes, even though I've taken my college materials and I've sort of ease them back a little bit so that high school kids or even middle school kids can understand them. They're preparing students for college. So if you're a homeschool parent and you think, I want my kid to go to a great college and get a good scholarship someday and have all these academic opportunities, well, you might want to start actually doing college level instruction or participating in college level instruction and college level ideas earlier in the process. And again, that doesn't mean, well, I'm going to take this boxed curriculum or this what people have told me is AP stuff, and so that prepares my kid for college. It's like, maybe, but also maybe not. As I said, if I were a homeschool parent of a high school kid, I wouldn't be using those things. I would be seeking out, again, what a great opportunity from an educational standpoint, that as a homeschool parent, you can seek out people who do things differently. Isn't the whole point of doing homeschooling that you can teach kids in a different way than they would get in a normal traditional public high school? So that's what I do. When you take my classes, again, that were initially built at the college level, but I've eased them back to the high school level and middle school level. Yeah, I talk about things in a different way than the standard boxed curriculum does. It's much more interesting. It's much more engaging. And again, because that's who I wanted to reach when I was as a teacher, who I wanted to reach as a student. I wanted to reach my younger self, who was kind of bored by a lot of things. So that's how I teach. And if that sounds interesting to you, great. I have tons of free materials so you can kind of get a flavor of how things go. Most of those are a bit general, so if you want more detailed and deeper dives into those topics, my full courses are definitely available. But that's what I encourage people to do. If you're a homeschool parent, or again, if you're a classroom teacher and you just want to do things differently than what everyone else does, and you're sick of using the same boxed curriculum that the rest of your school does, and you want to talk about topics that are way more interesting, whoever you are, you should check out my stuff. Because, as I said, as a teacher, I wouldn't use a lot of the materials that you see from the major publishers. I would come up with my own, or I would seek out people who have way deeper expertise than people who just write textbooks. Again, not to bash on these people, but just as an example, the authors of some of those textbooks, I have, again, a whole stack of them. Many of them have background in teaching, which is nice, but they may not necessarily have a background expertise in that field. And so when I look at various English materials and I see someone who has, a teaching background and an EDD, I think, well, that's nice. And for the lower levels, that is enough to get by. But once your kid gets past middle school and into high school, you need a content expert. And those folks tend to not be that. There are people who are just authors. They've been tasked with coming up with things to publish, or they are former teachers who weren't necessarily content experts. They're good teachers, but they didn't have an expertise in a specific field like we do at the college level. Again, my PhD is in English. Every other professor at the college level is going to have advanced training and expertise in their field: history, economics, philosophy, whatever it is. And again, if I were a homeschool teacher, that's who I would want to be learning from. Not just anybody who just is a basic 6th grade teacher. I'd want to seek out people who are experts in certain fields and have them guide my student and me as a parent through those materials. And that's what I do. So if you're looking for something that's elevated beyond just the boxed curriculum that you can buy anywhere, I encourage you to check out my resources on english-champion.com. The other component of this, when I talk about some of these textbooks and that have all these activities and exercises and worksheets in them, we're at a place now that you don't need that. Okay, you can just Google sample worksheets for my 6th grader on grammar or whatever, and it'll come up for free on Google. Or now we have ChatGPT. Type in ChatGPT, create a list of 10 algebra problems for my 7th grade student, and it'll do it. You don't need to buy the box curriculum. So if you're going to educate your child and you just want to do the basics of, well, shove them in front of a worksheet and have them do that for a while. Well, you can do that for free. You don't need to be buying things from publishers. But if you want an elevated explanation of these materials that's done in an interesting way that goes beyond what normal classroom teachers do, or what normal parents can probably do, because they don't have that background expertise, that's what I do. I go further with it and I explain things to the students and to you so that then you can come alongside and sit with them and guide them through. If you want to have them do those math problems, great. But it helps to have an expert explain those things. If you want your student to be able to read that novel on his own and be able to discuss it, yeah, great. Well, yeah, you don't need a boxed curriculum for that. What would be more helpful is to have a college professor walk through that novel with you, explain some of the key details of the real meanings behind what these books have to offer, and then you can take that and run with it and apply those things into that child, your child's specific life and all the things you and your family believe and are involved in. That's what I can bring to you and your family. So, again, I'm sometimes a little confused about what homeschool folks are valuing when it comes from an education standpoint. Some of them really want to be intimately involved in their kids' education, and that's great. Others I see want to do the homeschooling thing, but also want to send the students off to do their own schooling. They don't actually want to be the teacher. And so I'm like, well, which is it? I'm confused about what our goals here. So what I offer, once again, is that as an expert in this field of English, I can explain these things to you and bring a different perspective that you won't hear anywhere else. You won't hear it in a normal classroom. You won't read it in a boxed curriculum that has, a bunch of workbooks. It's going to be different and unique and interesting. And then you as the parent can strengthen your bond with your child by diving even more deeply into those ideas, because I'm going to prompt you. I'm going to show you what you should be talking about. And then I let you guys have your discussion and learn from each other and again, grow stronger as a family in an educational way. So like I said, this message is for that specific group of people, but anyone who's involved in education in any form, even if you're a public school teacher, I hope you check out my materials because, like I said, there are a lot of students out there, because I was one of them, and maybe you are one of them too, that understand the value of education. Again, I became a teacher, so obviously I've always cared about education, but I went for way too long in my life sitting in classes, reading textbooks, where I thought, yeah, this doesn't matter to me. I understand how the education matters, but this specifically, I don't care. And I'll do the assignment because you told me to, but am I really learning that much here? I don't know. If that was you, like it was me, I encourage you, check out my materials. I teach things in a different way. And again, my goal is to inspire you as a parent to want to strengthen the bond you have with your child by exploring important novels or important concepts in writing and communication, tackling controversial ideas about media, or whatever's going on in the culture. We can do that with my materials, and so I hope you join me. Again, www.english-champion.com. Lots of free stuff that you can try out, and then lots of very reasonably priced materials as well. I slashed all my prices recently. I was handing out so many discounts to people because I have lots of friends and family members who are like, hey, my kid's now in this grade and we want to do this class, and I would say, well, here, since you're my friend or in my family, like I'll just give it to you for way cheaper. And so I kind of started to lose track of who I would give in discounts to and how much off was it, what did I charge you? Then I just slashed all the prices for everybody. So everything's way cheaper, just because I want to help as many people as possible. So if that's something you're interested in, please check it out. And if you have any questions about it, there's contact information on my website, or you can contact me right here through Substack. I'm happy to help anybody who needs help, especially those parents who want to bring a new type of learning environment for their student and help them to maximize their potential, because I want your kids to be great just like you do, and I think we can work together to do that. Thanks for watching. See you next time.